Welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for our local leagues in Colorado House District 58, which include the Gunnison League, the Montezuma League, and the League of the Uncompahgre Valley. I am Gretchen Nikoloff. I'm going to be your moderator. And I am a resident of midway between Paonia and Hotchkiss. So League of the Uncompahgre Valley by a little stretch, but close enough. We're in the same drainage. Other leaguers who are going to be helping tonight are Tony Adams from the Gunnison League, who will be our timer, and Janine Reed from the Uncompahgre Valley League. So we have with us our candidates, Kathleen Curry and Larry Don Sukla. Did I pronounce it correctly, Mr. Sukla?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, the league has been in this business for 104 years. We are a political, nonpartisan organization. We work to increase understanding of major policy issues, and we work to influence issues after extensive study. The League advocates on issues after extensive study, but we never support or oppose candidates or political parties. The purpose of the forum is to let you all know where the candidates for House District 58 stand on the issues. So the forum is not a debate, no rebuttals. The candidates have 2 minutes for opening remarks and 1 minute for a closing statement, and 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds, for answering questions. Our timekeeper will warn the candidates when their time is about to expire. And if the candidate chooses not to answer a question, that's fine as well. You just don't get any extra bonus points. So I have to enforce the time limits, so hopefully you'll just adhere to them. Okay, candidates, you're not to interrupt each other. And we have prepared a few questions ahead of time. After our opening statements, we are starting with Kathleen Curry. 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just verifying the audio is good for everybody, hopefully. Okay. So my name is Kathleen Curry. I'm a candidate for House District 58. And first, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thank all of the folks that have zoomed in to listen to this conversation about House District 58. I decided last summer to throw my hat in the ring and run for the seat, really for a pretty simple reason. I care deeply about the Western Slope, and I wanted to make sure that we had a strong voice on our behalf and an effective voice on our behalf at the Capitol. So I decided I would give it a shot. A little bit about myself. I'm from Gunnison. I come from a ranch family. We have a cow-calf operation. I have about 25 years of experience working in the water business in various capacities. I served in the Colorado State House for 3 terms from 2005 to 2010. And I currently work at the Capitol, or I did up until the end of the session. And I've been there the last 6 years advocating for West Slope water districts and sportsmen and women and the agricultural sector. So that work at the Capitol has given me the opportunity to stay up to speed on things, but it's also given me a front row seat to how outnumbered we are here on the Western Slope. For those who aren't that familiar, there are 65 seats in the House, and 6 of those seats are West Slope District. So we just have to make sure that whoever we send can be a strong advocate and be effective on our behalf. So I would be extremely grateful if the voters in House District 58 decided to send me back to the Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Larry Don?
Well, hi, I'm Larry Don Sukla. I'm 59 years old. I was a Montezuma County Commissioner for 8 years. I'm married with 2 daughters. One is 18, just graduated, and another daughter that's 25 that works School of Deaf and Blind in Salt Lake City. She's fluent in sign language. I am a rancher. I own a farm. I own a real estate company. I've leased all my cattle to somebody so I could do this job full time, and I've leased my farm to a farmer so that I can do this full time. I was termed out in 2020, and then for 3 years I worked on the farming and ranching. I've been a logger. I own 3 real estate or 3 landscape companies. Was a truck driver. I was in mining. I worked for a blasting company for several years. I drove a food truck to Grand Junction delivering food at one time. And I want to thank you guys as well for inviting me today and for the voters to know a little bit about myself and my opponent. And the reason that I'm running is because I don't want to run. I don't really want to do this, but I feel like I have to. But I don't like the direction that our state has been going. And I believe that as the Colorado County Commissioner of the Year in 2017, I think there's 204, 207 county commissioners, and I was elected by my peers. I was nominated by a Democrat for that 2017 nomination, and I won it, the Commissioner of the Year. I didn't know anything about being a commissioner when I started, absolutely nothing. And I took a budget from 9 million to reserves from 9 million to 36 million. And I got a lot accomplished as a county. All right, thank you. She's very forceful, and I like that.
Yeah, the League of Women Voters raises them tough.
Good.
Okay. So the first question, what do you feel are the most important issues facing House District 58? And do you have any proposed solutions if those are pressing issues?
Who are you starting with?
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, sorry. For some reason I was on mute.
No, it's
Hear me now?
No, it's my oldest daughter trying to call me, so I just have to figure out how to
Oh,
stop it. Okay. All right.
okay.
All right, guys.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
And the question is the top 3 issues
Yeah.
and what would we do about them?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's
okay.
your plan?
So well, we have a lot of issues that are facing the district, but what I hear most often, I think, is affordable housing. And so I think that one has risen to the top of my list with a lot of conversations that I've had. Almost everybody mentions water as a key issue, and that's a broad topic, but it's an issue that everybody is, kind of trying to track and has concerns about. And then I would say economic opportunity for our young people and for all of us really in the district. and on the West Slope in general, that comes up a lot as well. So the first two, the affordable housing piece, what we can do in the General Assembly is, I think, try not to get in the way of constructing more affordable housing and hopefully incentivizing that. It's not an easy nut to crack, and it's been on the table for the last couple of years. So maybe we'll end up having a question on that, and I can give a little more detail. And then on the water side, a whole lot of work needs to be done there too. But I think the priority in the next session, for me anyway, would be working on infrastructure funding.
Okay, thank you. Larry Don?
Well, I would say the people is my priority on the Western Slope. The people of the Western Slope of the 8 counties that I would represent. As a county commissioner, it didn't matter if you were Republican, Democrat, or Independent. I thought of you as family, and I did whatever I could to help you along the way. Cost of living would probably, I would say, would be what is affecting the citizens of HD 58 the most. And I believe that a lot of the problems with cost of living is too many rules and regulations on and we need to relax some of our rules and regulations. And I believe that our citizens will prosper better if we do that. Another one, actually, it would be water as well. I have a plan what I think that you could do, believe that you could do with water. Another one would be our roads. I don't think that we're getting our fair share of the money through our gas taxes on the Western Slope and the Eastern Slope. It goes by population, but I still believe that if there was an audit done of CDOT, we would find that we are being shortchanged on the amount of dollars going to the Western Slope versus the Eastern Slope.
Thank you. Since you both mentioned it, why don't we take up the question of affordable housing and your ideas, elaborate on them a little bit for how we address this issue. So Larry Don, I'm going to ask you to go first this time.
Okay, well, I said I run a real estate company. So when the question is brought up about affordable housing, there's no such thing today as affordable housing. Let me repeat what I just said. There's no such thing as affordable housing. And the reason that I know that is because of talking to builders and developers. So it costs the same amount of money to buy a 2x4 and a 2x6 and all the materials to build a house. And the way that it works is they say you buy the acre you buy the land by the acre, you sell it by the lot. You buy the whiskey by the barrel, you sell it by the shot. So where developers make their money is in affordable land. And so you'll have to tell me where there is some affordable land, and then I can tell you where you can do affordable housing. It's the infrastructure that costs so much to run the electricity and to run the water. And so if you want to create affordable housing, my solution would be to go to devastated places where you have foreclosures and HUD foreclosures, bank foreclosures in Denver, for an example, and you revitalize those drug-infested communities, and that's where you create your affordable housing.
Okay, Kathleen?
Thank you, Gretchen. Well, I'm going to focus in on what the General Assembly has been doing in that regard. And we have seen in the last 2 years a couple of bills come forward that dealt with the housing issue. And what we don't want, and that would be a heavy hand from the top down from this governor or others that feel like they should be instructing local governments as to how to resolve this issue, or at least make progress on the issue, probably never resolve it. Like Larry Don said, it's a really tough situation to get ahead of, but the General Assembly this year will be talking about different options. And I wanted to add an element that has to do with not only the local control issue, but the water issue, that a lot of what I'm seeing happen at the Capitol is an emphasis to direct communities to have more infill and to have more density when they grow. And I've been thinking about this a bit, and I think that's probably a good thing because it would put less pressure on West Slope water supplies if we had efficient growth on the Front Range. But my main takeaway would be to maintain local control and then use state resources to incentivize it.
Thank you, Larry. Larry Don?
I already answered it.
Oh, good. All right, let's move on to the topic of mental health, particularly among our young people. Seems to be an ongoing issue in Colorado. How can the General Assembly contribute positively to improve mental health among our residents, especially our young people?
Which one do you?
Who do you want to have go first?
Larry Don, please.
So my daughter's 18 years old, and she just graduated in May. And in March, she came home one day and she said, "Dad, I have these lifelong friends, and they're at school, and they're being told that there's something wrong with them, that whoever the counselor is or whatever, that there's something wrong with them, and that maybe they need to be put on medication." And my daughter has known these friends all of her life, and she said there's nothing wrong with her friends. They're teenage girls that have the problems that all teenage girls have. And so I would look at mental health with teenagers with a fine tooth and comb, and I tell you where I would look, and I would look to the people that's telling them that there's something wrong with them, because I believe my daughter. I trust that woman that 100%. And so as far as mental health and the children, I ain't so sure that there's as many health people that have mental health problems is what the people are trying to tell them that they do. And that's my answer. I would look at the people, tell them that they have mental health first, and make sure they have the right credentials to make that assessment.
Okay. Kathleen?
Thank you. And this is a really important issue for a lot of people on the Western Slope and in general. And I would add the rural suicide rates are 4 times higher than the average rate, the rate that's average for the population in Colorado. And we've got a problem on our hands, regardless of who makes the diagnosis. The problem is there, and the funds are not. So what you have, the state's role, we typically throw money at things when we can, but we're looking at a General Assembly that's going to be short almost $1 billion next session. So it would be wrong for me to say that, we should just go down there and get more funding to help with mental health services. It will not be that simple, but it's identified in our Gunnison Hospital annual report as the #1 issue that they've identified for a healthcare issue in Gunnison County. I don't know that it's top of mind in all 8 counties, but I know it is in that one. And I hope that we'll be able to allocate more funds to make sure that we provide more services. But I do know there'll be budget limitations, to be realistic.
Okay, thank you. Larry Don, anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I don't think that would be fair to Kathleen.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. true. It's not a debate. Okay. Let's talk about taxes. What do you propose for tax reforms in the state, if any? Larry Dunn, you can start.
Well, you let her start because you let me had me start last time.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Sukla. So, well, there was a special session this fall and that the governor called because the legislation that passed last session didn't really cut it in the minds of the folks that were there was a group that brought two ballot initiatives to try to tackle the property tax question. So I'm not really bringing up sales tax. I'm talking property tax with this question right now. And they did reach a fairly good compromise at the special session, and you'll see that on the ballot, and the two other measures got pulled. So that was some good progress, but like with a lot of legislation, you have to let it work a little bit to see what doesn't work and what does work. So I imagine that'll be the basis and the foundation for most of the conversations next session with regard to property tax. But it doesn't really completely resolve the issue because everybody, as you know, probably your property taxes have been going up. And that's as a result of the ballot measure that we all passed a few years ago to try to even out the score between commercial and residential property taxes. So I know that issue will continue to percolate, but we do have a pretty good foundation going into the next session.
Okay, Larry Dunn.
Well, you can give a kid $10 of an allowance a week, and they're going to spend all $10. And then you can up the allowance to $20 a week, and they're going to spend all $20. I look at our state government the same way that I look at giving a kid their allowance. So I don't believe we need to raise any more taxes. And what is our state going to do when, if for some unforeseen reason that we had a property housing crash again? What goes up must come down eventually. Then they're going to be in serious trouble. So I would think, as far as taxes, no more taxes on the property owners, period. And the state needs to reallocate their funds. I believe they're mismanaging the $42 billion. And I believe we could give teachers raise double if we reallocated funds from things that I believe that are not as important to the people that own the state government than what those in the state government think is best for the people.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about growth and the state of Colorado. I've read recently that the growth rate has slowed down somewhat, but a lot of communities are still struggling. So what ideas do you have to address those issues that are impacted by growth? I think you've started to answer in an earlier question, but go ahead and elaborate a bit more. Kathleen.
Me? Oh, okay. Well, this issue is obviously driving a lot of other conversations. You look at traffic congestion on the Front Range, you look at demand for utilities, you look at impacts on air quality, all of it is driven by growth. And what I would like to see happen over there is managed growth that took into account whether or not the water supplies are available to serve those new areas and whether the other infrastructure can, if the capacity is there to handle it. So in other words, not unfettered growth, and because that's driving a whole lot of pressure on our resources in this part of the state. So having said that, in the General Assembly, if you pass a law to regulate how growth maybe the criteria for approving a new subdivision has to include water supply availability. If you go that route, that's going to apply to us here too. So, you know, you can't pick and choose the regions. So we'd have to make sure that whatever we do on that front met our needs as well. But the amount, it's not sustainable to continue at the pace that we have been growing at. So I'm glad that I didn't know it had kind of plateaued a little. So that would be good news if you live on Highway 50 in Gunnison, which we do.
Okay. Larry Don?
Oh, well, as a former county commissioner, I would advocate that growth would be local controlled. And so by your county commissioners of each county, and that the state legislators should stay out of it. And we already have in Mancos, Colorado, they already have a moratorium on growth because of the water supply. So the locals took care of the growth issue in that particular town themselves. A local control.
Thank you. Let's switch over to energy. What would be your approach considering bills related to alternative energy sources as well as the traditional fossil fuels?
I believe it's me.
Okay.
So I have a cabin that has solar on it, and I absolutely love it. It's off the grid because I can't get to the grid. But in La Plata County, they used to, when they would drill a natural gas well, they would make a deal with the landowner, and they would pipe the natural gas to their house and their barn, and then they would heat their house and their barn for free. And I would like to use that same approach with solar farms. Instead of these big 5, 6, 7, 800,000 acre solar farms, I believe we can mimic the fossil fuel industry, and we could go to these ranchers and small farms, and we can say, okay, if we do an acre solar farm or a 5-acre solar farm on your land, we will provide your electricity to your house and your barn and your shop for free, and then all excess goes into the grid. As far as petroleum energy, well, you need to know that is every dollar that comes out of the hole for CO2, natural gas, or oil is taxed at 87.5 cents. That means that leaves the energy company with 12.5 cents of profit. We have a thing called DOLA, Department of Local Affairs. When I was a county commissioner, if I used the word approximate, they used to, I think I was just getting started.
Well, maybe we can circle back to that question after a while.
Okay, so the question was it geared in general, what do we think about energy, or what about, or the General Assembly? I'm sorry, I need you to repeat it.
Okay. What would be your approach in considering bills related to alternative energy sources as well as to fossil fuel sources?
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No?
I just wanted to make sure it was about bills. Well, you know, every year there are a lot of energy related bills, and some of them are of direct impact on House District 58. There was a solar siting bill that came up really late in the session last year that ended up being okay, but it would have been really prescriptive and harmful for the family that had the lease on the ground. And it kind of it was reorient for those big solar farms like Mr. Sukla mentioned. So that it's definitely a relevant question. And then also on the traditional energy side, of course, there's been a ton of bills that have come forward to regulate the industry as well. My personal philosophy when I see legislation like that would be to not penalize the traditional producers. I think they're an important part of the overall energy sector. And I don't think we should use too heavy of a government hand to try to promote one over the other. I like the idea of incentivizing, but I really think it's more practical to try to support the whole spectrum of energy sources to try to meet the needs of folks in Colorado. And the 1.5 minutes goes really fast.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Um, can you both talk a little bit about climate change and how we can be prepared should the worst befall us? And Kathleen just got through talking, so I'm going to give it to Larry Don.
The climate changes every day. And there's nothing that I believe we can do about it.
Okay, Kathleen?
Well, I think the weather changes every day. And I do think there are things we can do about the rate of climate change. And it's having an impact on our hydrology in particular, which means that it's having an impact on the agricultural sector and on available supplies. And then, of course, available supplies on the Front Range because they rely on the water on our side of the divide. So what I think we could do is take as many steps as possible that are voluntary, that that might reduce the amount of carbon production. I don't know how much we can move the needle because of the other countries that are contributing as much or more, so that we could stand on our heads here and do as much as we can. But I don't know that we can turn the whole thing around, but I think we could slow the pace of it if we're smart. And I don't think it hurts to also acknowledge that the agricultural sector, with all the green that we produce, is a carbon sink, and that I would like that to be recognized as we have these climate change conversations. And I do think it's a really important issue.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about water again. The Colorado River Compact locks us into certain obligations. And do you see a role for the state legislature in addressing those issues? And Larry Don, can you take that one?
I was first last time.
Okay,
I'm happy to go. I'm sure
you go first.
we'll have a good conversation about it. There's definitely a role for the Colorado General Assembly, but we do have the commissioner's office working on that. Becky Mitchell's the Colorado River Commissioner for the state of Colorado, and our representative for the renegotiations of the operational plan for Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So, the compact's not on the table for renegotiation. What is on the table is how we operate those reservoirs and what we have to commit to deliver. I like where the state attorney general and the commissioner's office is headed on this, because they've taken a hard line saying that we don't owe any water at the state line, and I like that. I don't know if we will prevail in court, because I expect litigation. So we need to be ready for a situation down the road if we don't prevail when this goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. which it will ultimately. We may have to come up with water at the state line to meet those obligations. And the General Assembly's role right now is to make sure that the commissioner's office and the AG's office are adequately funded. And there's another thing we should be doing, and that is doing some rulemaking on what we should direct DNR to do rulemaking on the event that there is a shortage that we have to deliver water for.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sukla.
Yes, ma'am. So 7.5 million acre feet is for the upper basin. Colorado gets 51%, 0.6 or something like that, which would be 3.5 million acre feet. The most water we've ever sent them is 2.8 million acre feet. It averages around 2.6, 2.5, meaning that we have almost 1 million acre feet every year that Colorado is entitled to, that we are already sending down there. So there should be no shortages from Colorado because we are not using our full allocation because of hydrology, in my opinion. So I would fight tooth and nail since we're already sending them. In fact, I would change, since we are changing the management of those reservoirs, I would change to where Lake Powell was controlled by the upper basin. And then I would keep that 1 million acre feet that is entitled to Colorado at Lake Powell. And then when they grow our vegetables in the Imperial Valley and Yuma, I would charge them for the water. I would send it to them because we all want to eat our vegetables in the winter, and I would charge them for it. And then I would use that money for infrastructure in the 4 upper states to do water improvements.
All right. I want to ask Janine or Tony, are people who are in the audience able to pose a question via chat?
We had asked that questions be posed onto our email account prior to this. So there was one additional question that came in. I believe I sent it to you, Gretchen, concerning public schools. Did you receive that?
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Public schools, high schools. Did you get that yesterday?
Apparently not.
Okay, well, I'll find it and I will let you know what it is. But other than that, if you feel like there's extra time, Gretchen, you can certainly invite the audience to put their questions in chat.
Yeah, I would like to do that because I know some people must have questions. We do have a kind of a wrap up type question that has to do with your values as a human being. What personal values do you believe are most important for a public official to have? And give us any example of activities you've participated in that enhance, that address those values.
I believe it's me.
Yes, I do too.
Well, I've been an auctioneer for 30 some years, and anytime somebody's in a wreck or is sick with cancer, I've been the guy that they called up to do the benefit auction, and I'm the guy that sold the pies for $500 and helped the community out. So the way that I was raised is you help your neighbors. I will help my neighbors, which would be all of 58. I was taught not to lie or commit fraud. And I'm going to be an honest politician coming up there if there's such a thing. So I believe that doing all of those volunteer, I was also a volunteer firefighter for 12 years. And I like helping other people. And that's why I would enjoy this job. There's a gratification to that.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you for the question. Boy, I agree. I want to try to help people. And I would also put land and water on the list too. But as far as the human side of it goes, and the original part of the question, which was, what do you think is a really important value for elected officials to have? And I thought of two things. One was empathy, and the other was respect. That it seems to me that if we could maintain a more respectful dialogue and try to understand where the other person's coming from, even if you don't feel the same or if you don't totally get it, just at least try, because most people that that serve, at least in the General Assembly, are there trying to do the best they can for the folks at home. And maybe they were asked to run a bill, maybe that something happened in their lives that motivated them, and it's I think being to be a good elected official, at least in the Capitol building and probably elsewhere too, would be to try to really listen to where others are coming from and have some empathy for their position. But you have to have a backbone as well and fight for your people at home, and just do it in a way that is not personal. So I know I don't have enough time to go into any more detail, but thanks.
Gretchen, I did find the question that came in yesterday. I'm writing this as a public school student in a rural county. As a legislator, what steps will you take to address the issues facing HD 58's rural school districts? Kathleen, do you want to start?
I believe it's mine. No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
it is. Oh, it's hers. Sorry.
Okay, so, well, there are some folks at the Colorado State Capitol that have done some really good work for rural schools, and the BEST program is a good example of that. The new school in Dove Creek used BEST funds, and so there have been efforts in the past to step up our game on that. But I think we still have an overall problem with funding being pretty low on the list of states, and the rates that the salaries that we pay our teachers is not sufficient for them to even begin to find housing in some of these communities. So there's a lot more work to be done, but I do feel like there's a real commitment already at the Colorado State House, and an understanding that we have the new school finance formula that passed late in the session, really late in the session this past year, put an emphasis on rural school districts to try to improve the funding for those districts. So they're making headway, but again, will be, limited by the overall budget.
Thank you. Mr. Sukla?
Yeah, so every 36 section is a school section, and every 16 is a half section. And that's where the best grants come from. The state land board decided that that's where they wanted to use the funds to help build schools, and they do a 50% match on the schools. They did one in Montezuma County as well. I believe that we are mismanaging our $42 billion at the state, and I believe we can remanage those funds, and we can double the salaries of teachers. I live right 70 miles from Farmington, New Mexico, or 50 from Shiprock, New Mexico. And you can't believe how many neighbors that I have that get and drive 50 to 70 miles every day because they make twice as much money in Shiprock on the Indian Reservation than they do in Cortez, Colorado. So I would advocate to send more funding and pay our teachers more.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions from our current audience. What do the candidates plan to do to support higher education? Mr. Sukla?
Higher education. Well, it's already too expensive for these college kids to go to higher education unless you're a very wealthy family. So I would advocate that the universities lower their tuition fees so that we can get more kids with less money that they could go ahead and go to school there. I would go after the universities. They've got $1 billion endowments. Why do the kids have to bleed, not the universities? That's my answer.
Thank you. Ms. Curry.
Thank you. So I had this very question in my mind as well, and I went and talked with our president at Western Colorado University. And he said the number one issue was making sure that the ballot initiatives that would have had a big impact on higher ed, that they be pulled and that a compromise be arrived at during the special session. And since I think we made good headway on that front, he's because I followed up with him after that, and he said that now his priority would be to just make sure that the Joint Budget Committee didn't cut their tuition rates. And so it's kind of different from what Mr. Sukla said. I agree. I had two kids, and one of them went to Western, and we got him out of there without school debt, but it was a struggle to do that. And Western's not one of the top expensive schools in the state. So we have a mismatch between ability to pay and what it costs to run these universities for sure. But the Joint Budget Committee has a lot to say about how they operate. And then our capital committee has the same amount of authority over the buildings they can build. So I'm not sure what'll be on the plate next year, but they're always hoping that they get through each legislative session without a cut.
Thank you. And then the last question will be, what effect do you think immigration has on the economy of Colorado? Ms. Curry?
It's immigration on the well, I think it's a drain in the Denver area on services from what I've read. But there's two sides to the equation. We have a lot of our workforce are people that have come in from other countries, and they're an important part of the workforce. I mean, we have resort communities in District 58 that are heavily reliant on service workers that you could call people that have immigrated. We have ag workers that we rely on to harvest crops. We have construction workers that we rely on. So, but I do think that it has created a strain on our social services and our healthcare system. A lot of these folks are paying taxes, and they are paying their way, at least at the Gunnison Hospital. But I think that it's a two-sided equation, and I don't know the exact statistics, but an increase in population, regardless of what they look like or where they came from, is going to drive increased demand for services. And that's what we see happening a lot more so, I think, in Denver than out on the Western Slope, but it's definitely an issue.
Thank you. Mr. Sukla?
Well, I'm sitting in Olathe, Colorado right now, and I visit with some farmers that hire over 100 people on the H-2A program, where they come from Mexico. The minimum wage is 16 something an hour, and then they just had a law passed where it went to 56 hours and then time and a half, and then it's going to go down to 40 in 2 years, according to the new law that was done. You want to talk about your housing affordability? You had 42,000 more illegal immigrants into your Denver system. You just took housing away from legal immigrants, and so the farmers here, I asked them bluntly, do you have anybody that is an illegal immigrant picking your vegetables? And they said, no, they all come from the H-2A program. So it is a huge impact on the citizens of Colorado. And I say, don't let any more in.
Okay, thank you. Gretchen, back to you. You're muted.
We're ready for closing statements now, and I truly don't remember who started.
I think I started. I
Okay,
think,
then
yeah.
we'll have Larry Dunn start the closing. Thank you both for your thoughtful answers, and this is your chance to pitch your candidacy.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I hope that I have your vote, and I did it as the county commissioner. You got to have backbone to have this job, and I want to do what's best for the people that I'm going to work for. They're going to be my boss. As a county commissioner, the biggest fights I was always in was with other elected officials and not the citizens that I fought for. So as long as I stay true and do what's best for the citizens, then I will be an effective legislator. Thank you again for inviting me, League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Thank you also for the opportunity to participate in this forum and the folks that have listened in. And thank you, Mr. Sukla, for the good conversation. I think you can see from these issues that we have a lot of work to do on behalf of the folks here. And some of the issues are really pressing. We have to make sure that whoever goes is able to be effective. I think I have a strong background for the job. I served in the General Assembly and I've been working down there for the couple of years. So I think I have the demeanor to try to find the common ground and make sure that we don't end up with the short end of the stick. We are outnumbered at the State House, so we have to build those relationships, and I think I can do that. It would be my huge honor if the voters did send me back to the Capitol next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the folks in the audience. Sorry we didn't get to all your questions. So we want to remind you that the ballots are going in the mail on October 14th. So if you're still wondering how you want to vote on ballot issues, for example, we encourage you to participate in ballot issues forums that your local league may have. I know the Uncompahgre Valley League will have one. And also visit vote411.org. And if you type in your address, it will show you what's on your ballot, which is very helpful for a lot of people. So we're hoping to have a Congressional District 3 candidate forum. And as I mentioned, ballot issues presentations as well. So keep in touch with us. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and good night.